family rentals here in Baltimore City. If you weren't already aware of this, we have been licensing multifamily rental in Baltimore for about 50 years. Since I believe sometime in the 60s, maybe the early 70s. But for a long time, there was not the political will to do the next and bigger and harder part of the job, which is to regulate the individual houses that are either being rented as single-family homes or that have been divided into just 2 apartments. If it's a house that's been divided into 3 apartments, that has qualified as a multifamily and that has been inspected in the past. But now everything will be. Just to give you a quick overview, there were 3 general reasons why we on the council felt that this was an important step to take. The most basic reason was there are a lot of homes out there that are not in good shape. And people are charging other people money to live in homes that are just not up to the level that most of us would find reasonable and dignified to live. Sometimes you will hear people talk about an affordable housing crisis in Baltimore City. I have questioned the need to use the term crisis because it's not like in some cities where you literally cannot find a single unit for under a certain threshold. You can find cheap housing in Baltimore. The problem is it's crappy. It's in bad shape, it's not safe, and it's not healthy, but it's there, and no one will stop you from living in it, and no one will stop a greedy, self-centered, insensitive jerk of a landlord from collecting money to let other people live in unsafe housing. And so that was the primary reason why we wanted to do this. The secondary reason is also to protect and preserve other housing. As a council person for the last 10 years, I have gotten a number of complaints from my neighborhoods that are largely row houses, where people will complain about the house next to them, where they are now having mold problems or water damage or rodents or vermin or something in their house that is coming from the house next door. And previously, there was very little city government could do in a situation like that. I usually ended up telling people they were going to have to take either their next door neighbor or the landlord to court, because even if there was something going on in the other house, if the tenant did not voluntarily let a housing inspector in to see what was the problem, the city could not write a citation. And a lot of times, the landlords would tell the tenants not to let anybody else in the house. There was one situation where there was concern about water damage and mold in a person's basement, and they said the water is coming from the basement next door. So we sent a housing inspector over there. The tenant let the housing inspector in because the basement door was padlocked and the tenant did not have a key. And the landlord had told the tenant, you don't need to go into the basement. If you have a problem, call me and I will send someone over to go into the basement and deal with whatever it is. And that is the kind of situation that we were dealing with. And so the way to get around that is to require some type of mandatory inspection process. And that's where you get into rental licensure and inspection. The third reason that we did this isn't necessarily as important in every neighborhood, but I don't know, maybe you guys are a neighborhood where you don't have any problems with troublesome tenants. Maybe people who play their music too loud all night long, or have big loud parties and leave a lot of trash out in front and are keeping you up in the middle of the night. We have neighborhoods that are near colleges and where college students rent the houses and throw on apartments. And we have tried over the years a variety of different things to try to get the landlords engaged in helping us teach the tenants how to be good neighbors. And some landlords have worked with us, and some landlords let it go in one ear and out the other. And even when we would fine them for some of the bad behavior that their tenants were doing, they would look at the size of the fine, and by state law, we can't do a fine larger than $1,000. They would look at the $1,000 fine, and in one particular case, they would look at the $42,000 a year they were collecting in rent from the 8 college students who were legally living in the house that had been divided into 2 apartments. And they would say, yeah, okay, go ahead, fine me. Fine me 2 or 3 times a year, that's fine. Because that's just going to be the cost of doing business. Now with this law, if you have repeated violations of a separate law called the social host law, where you might get a citation for an unruly social event. If you get multiple violations of that, that is a legitimate reason for the housing commissioner to suspend, deny, or revoke your license to rent the property. So now, maybe instead of a $1,000 fine, you're going to lose 6 months or a year of $42,000 a year rent. And we're expecting that that's going to get more attention from the landlords who weren't willing to work with us in the past. Yes,
so what strategy are they going to use to completely close it down? Because all they have to do is illegally, keep renting, because we see that now.
Okay, so that's a great question. One of the first things that we know we're going to have to deal with is enforcement. And that's where you guys come in. Because we're going to need help identifying the people who ignore the rules and continue to try to rent property, I guess effectively being the black market. They're going to be able to do some of it through, I guess we call it data analysis. We know where all the properties are. We know the ones that people are asking for homeowners tax credits on, and so we know those properties are owner occupied. If a house exists, is not vacant, and doesn't have a homeowner's tax credit on it, then it should be on the non-owner occupied property registry, which is not just houses, but also vacant lots, garages. If you've got any property that somebody is privately owned, but nobody is living in it, it is supposed to be on the non-owner occupied property registry. That is in fact now a requirement in the rental licensure, that if you are getting a license to rent a property, you have to register it on that database. That database has been in existence for years. It's always been technically illegal to not register, but housing didn't put any real effort into it because they had been looking at it from the perspective of they're just trying to gather information. So as much information as they can get, that's great. But if they can't get it, well, now you need to be in that registry in order to get your license. Which also means, from their perspective, now they can start doing cross-checks. And when they identify properties that aren't in the registry, but exist, and don't have vacant housing tickets, then each one of those is just going to have to be visually inspected. And if it's identified that this property is occupied, but it's not on the registry and there's no rental license for it, we're going to send an inspector in and figure out what's going on. But if we can get leads from neighbors or organized community organizations want to do it in bulk, that would be great too. He was first and then coming back to you.
Hey, 2 questions. First off, is there an additional fee to get the license?
There is no additional fee for the license. The license, I know, like Mike's like, what? The city's doing something and I'm charging? The license.
Well, you're on the registry already.
Right, the registry,
That already has one.
the registry has a fee.
Yeah.
That fee does not change, but people who previously weren't paying the registry fee are now going to pay that. You also will have to pay for the inspection that you need to get in order to get the license.
And that was my second part was, and is that an annual inspection or is it just once?
Okay, so this is one of the more complicated parts. It represents compromise between all the different stakeholders who helped put together this program. And here's how it works. Everybody at first, so this year when you come in this fall to get your license, which you must have before January 1, 2019. So when you come in this year to get your license, everyone will be issued a 2-year license. Everybody gets 2 years at first. When you come back in the fall of 2020 to renew your license, depending on how good of a property manager you've been, you will be eligible for either a 3-year license, a 2-year license, or a 1-year license. So if you've gotten no violations, no housing code violations in the last 2 years, or you got a couple but you abated them all within, I think it's 60 days. If you did everything we asked you to do, and you did it relatively quickly from the housing department's perspective, when you come back in 2020, you will be allowed to apply for a 3-year license. Do you want to ask now, or do you want me to go through all of them?
Yeah, because I guess when you're saying, for those of us that have lots, right, and they're vacant lots, we're still gonna have housing violations until we build. So does that make us ineligible for the 1 year, or do we
If you're,
see somebody personally?
you don't, if you just have a lot, you don't, the violations are only for the house with the license. So if you own this house and that house,
Right.
and this house is violation free, and this house has a bunch of them, your license for this one would be fine. You'd be able to get a 3-year
Okay,
license.
that's what I want.
But this one, you probably end up getting a 1-year license until you're able to straighten out whatever's going on.
Right, okay.
Is the inspection fee annual still?
No, the inspection fee is with the inspection because it's not a fee. You're not paying the city for the inspection because the inspections are not being done by the city. This is a model that Baltimore County has been doing for a while, so we've decided to follow this. You, as a landlord, will contract with a private home inspector, a licensed home inspector by the state, who also is registered with the city. And we already have several hundred home inspectors who have registered to be home inspectors for this program with the city. You, as a landlord or as a property owner, as a property management company, you contract with whichever home inspector you want. They come in, they will use a checklist that the city has drawn up, and they will inspect your house, and you pay them whatever they charge, whatever you negotiate with them.
So if you have a 3-year license, you only have to get an inspection every 3 years with that license.
Correct. Oh. Yeah, so, and because it's going to be essentially private market driven, I can't tell you what that's going to cost. I can tell you in Baltimore County,
Is it'll cost more than it does now?
Yes.
So
But that's okay, though.
actually, we're not. Thank you guys for coming. I'm not sure. I mean, I can understand that concern, but please keep in mind that I know at least one nonprofit organization that was working with the housing advocates that were helping us put this law together, that has already started looking into turning this into a jobs program, and going out and training people to be home inspectors, getting them licensed specifically so that they're able to offer low-cost home inspection to people who need their homes inspected. And I think the more people we get in there in terms of the supply, that'll drive down the price of the job. In Baltimore County, for single-family homes, it was running between $120 and $180 per home inspection. For multi-family units, it was more like $50 to $60 a unit. We'll come over here, and then I'll come back to you.
Well, yes, I'm also concerned about, rent sticker shock. Landlord comes in and changes the faucet, one faucet, and then decides to jack the rent up a lot, and drives the tenant and complain out of it. What protections will there be for tenant to explain there's something wrong here? And we went afraid. If it's fixed, the rent will skyrocket.
I think the accurate answer to that is nothing except the private market. I mean, if everybody jacked up their prices because of this, but jacked them up past the ability of people to pay, then people aren't going to, either people can afford the rent or they can't. I suspect not everyone would jack the rent up, which means the people who don't jack the rent up are going to get renters. But if you're looking for, is there some rent control kind of provision in this, there isn't anything like that. There is definitely an effort on the part of many of the housing advocates to get the city to create some type of fund that would help tenants who are thrown out of their homes because the landlord lost their license. And that is something that the city would, love to do, or we're trying to figure out how to fund that. But to the best of my knowledge, there isn't anything either in place or being actively worked on that would regulate how much people can raise the rent because of what they do to the house to bring it up to code. And in fact, that is one of the things that we went into this with our eyes open about, is that while the good side of this whole idea is to raise the overall quality of housing in Baltimore City, the downside is it is going to require that people reinvest in their properties, and almost everyone is going to pass the cost of that on to their tenants. So rents will go, the two downsides that we know of are rents will go up by some amount. It will, we have no way to estimate how much work needs to be done, so we can't do that part. The inspections itself, the inspections themselves don't cost that much spread across 2 or 3 years. So that cost of the program itself isn't going to be a dramatic increase for rent, but whatever property owners have to do to bring their homes up to code, that will raise rents. And we also know that there will be some number of houses for whom the property owner will look at the cost of bringing this house up to code and what rent they can realistically get, and they're going to say, and then of that group, some are going to say, I'm going to go to the black market and I'm just going to try to see how long I can get away with renting this property without licensing it. And some, the more law-abiding ones, are just going to walk away, and they're going to, secure the house and say it's not worth it for me to rent it, and we will lose some units in the overall house. Over here, and then back to him, and then George, and then you, and then you. Oh, you're in a tough spot. All right, I'll back up a little bit. Okay.
Actually, I have 2 questions. My first question is, why is the time limit to comply so short? 4 months
Thank you.
seems a little bit too short for all of the 1 and 2 dwellings that you have throughout the whole city. Why isn't it more like 8 months, or even, I would even say a year would be nice, but at least make it 8 months?
So,
That's my first question.
yeah, okay. You want to give me both, and I'll.
Yeah, that'd
Okay.
be
What's the
ideal.
second? What's the second one?
And then the second one is pertaining to affordable housing, like you were just talking about. I'm a renter. I had already decided to increase my rent already January 1st because the water bill is extremely high, and I've got to my house is a little older, so I'm replacing the whole air conditioning and heating unit. I'm doing lots of things to make sure that my tenants are comfortable. So I have never risen my rent. So this is the first time I'm doing that. So now I'm saying I've got these added fees, another $125 to get the inspection. Then there's time lost from work, like, going here and there to file it and all that kind of things. So what has the city got in place for these people who are not going to have to pay it? Well, I don't know.
Okay. I'll do them in that order. So the reason for the relatively short amount of time to comply is just an aspect of the calendar. And in all fairness, the bill took longer to pass than I would have liked. If we had passed it 2 or 3 months sooner, which was not my choice, but others successfully slowed down the process of the bill. If we had passed it 3 months earlier, there would have been 3 months more time to get everything done in a calendar year. We felt it would be easier for marketing purposes and for public education to try to use January 1 as a deadline. I will kind of verge into the second answer by saying, if, as the course of the fall proceeds, if we run into problems getting everybody through the pipeline to get licenses by January 1, it would not surprise me if an effort was made to give like an extra 2 or 3 month window to it, but that would only happen if all the landlords are actively trying to engage and do the process, and the city or the home inspectors can't handle all of the work. It's not going to happen if landlords all wait until November to submit their applications.
That's why I think a year, if you had said January 1st, 2020, I think it would be easier for people to comply and to take
So the short answer to that is yes, you're absolutely right. If we had said, we'll start in January